With Luca Guadagnino's Suspiria remake now available on video on demand and Blu-ray, there seemed to be no time quite like the present to revisit Dario Argento's original version of the film. With that in mind, here are 5 things you might not have known about Suspiria. Please be sure to tell me if you learned anything in the comment section below. Welcome back, Movie Maniacs. I'm Mike Bracken, aka The Horror Geek, and in today's edition of Did You Know, we're tackling one of the legendary Italian horror films, Dario Argento's 1977 classic Suspiria. But before we dive in, if you enjoy this video and want to see more, please consider liking it, subscribing to the channel, and hitting the annoying little bell button so you can get an alert whenever I post new content. And now, with all that crap out of the way, let's get down to business. Dario Argento's Suspiria is arguably the greatest film in the director's prodigious body of work, a stark departure from the gialli that came before it, and despite what half of the horror critics on the internet will tell you, Suspiria is not a giallo. The film heralded a new direction for Argento's cinema and his arrival as one of the genre's most striking visual stylists. Feeling he'd said pretty much everything he needed to say in the giallo format with his previous film, Deep Red, Argento moves into the supernatural realm here, with a tale of witches and dancers, of broken mirrors and broken minds. The film's hazy, dreamlike narrative is off-putting to some, but those who approach it with an open mind will find a dizzying, dazzling nightmare on film. So, with that in mind, here are 5 facts you may not have known about Suspiria. Number 1. Suspiria was inspired by an essay by Thomas de Quincey. Suspiria revolves around a dance school in Germany run by a coven of witches. The head of the coven is Helena Marcos, who we can presume is really a powerful ageless witch known as Mater Suspiriorum, aka the Mother of Sighs. Argento first learned about Mater Suspiriorum and her sisters Mater Tenebrarum and Mater Lacrimarum, the Mothers of Shadows and Tears respectively, after reading author Thomas de Quincey's Suspiria de Profundis, translated as Sighs from the Depths. In particular, a section titled Lavanna and Our Lady of Sorrows. De Quincey was a noted opium addict, and the fragmentary approach of the essays in Suspiria de Profundis were intended to be a sort of opium-fueled sequel to his 1821 work, Confessions of an Opium Eater. The original fragments were published in 1845, but it wouldn't be until 1891, after De Quincey's death, that the complete version, or as complete as can be, there were parts missing, would be assembled. Argento takes the 3 mothers mentioned in Lavanna and Our Lady of Sorrows and turns them into 3 witches, women who secretly rule the world from Germany, New York, and Rome. This concept would provide the basis for the filmmaker's 3 Mothers trilogy, with Inferno and Mother of Tears serving as the follow-up films. Argento wasn't the only artist inspired by Thomas de Quincey's work. Friend and fellow filmmaker Luigi Cozzi would use the material as the basis for his 1989 film The Black Cat, while novelist Fritz Leiber's Our Lady of Darkness mentions the 3rd mother multiple times throughout the narrative. Fun fact number 2. Snow White influenced the film's visual style. While it might seem hard to believe that a Walt Disney film had a major impact on the visual design of a gory Italian horror movie, it's actually true. Early on, during pre-production, Argento met with his cinematographer Luciano Tovoli and asked him to revisit Disney's Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Argento was quite taken with the film's lush Technicolor visuals and hoped to recreate them in a non-animated setting. Tovoli shot some test footage and Argento was pleased with the results, but this was only one potential hurdle crossed. By the late 1970s, Technicolor was an old-school technology that was too expensive to be practical. Technicolor realized this and was in the process of tossing out their equipment when Argento approached them in Rome. After some persuasion, the Rome branch kept a single machine to process the footage for the film. This is how Suspiria achieves the lurid color scheme throughout, and why it's the answer to the trivia question, what was the last film to be processed in 3-strip Technicolor? Yes, you're welcome next time you win at Trivial Pursuit. Suspiria fact number 3. It's at least partially inspired by true events. While no one would believe that 3 witches secretly rule the world, the idea of a boarding school being a haven for black magic and paganism does have some ties to reality. First is Argento's own interest in the Waldorf schools of Rudolf Steiner. Steiner was many things, including a philosopher, and his special brand of schools fell under fire for allegedly encouraging paganism under the auspices of artistic education. The Waldorf School in Stuttgart seems to provide at least the template for the infamous ballet academy featured so prominently in the film. Meanwhile, Daria Nickelodeon added her own contributions to the School of Black Magic idea through a story recounted by her own grandmother. It seems that when her grandmother was a young girl, she was sent to a school for the arts that was really more interested in teaching black magic than dancing or piano. I want to enroll. Sign me up. Nickelodeon's grandmother reportedly fled the school, but told Nickelodeon the story later, and it stuck with the actress through to her adulthood. When she told Argento the tale, it struck him so profoundly that he included it in the film. Number 4. Suspiria also owes a great debt to German expressionistic cinema. While Disney's Snow White had a profound influence on Argento's vision, the role of German expressionism can't be understated either. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the school of expressionism, here's a brief breakdown. I promise it won't get too academic. There won't be a test. German expressionism was a popular style of film in Germany that existed from around 1909 until the mid-1920s. It was largely born as a result of the German people trying desperately to make sense of the world around them. Political and social upheaval were arguably the primary catalyst for the birth of expressionistic cinema. Expressionism in art, film, or literature attempts to reappropriate an alienated universe by transforming it into a private, personal vision. Expressionist filmmakers were far more interested in transforming and distorting reality than they were in recreating it. To transform reality into their own personal vision, Expressionist filmmakers threw out almost all of the conventional tools of filmmaking that were in use at the time and supplanted them with new techniques and ideas. Some of these new methods included odd editing techniques, a reliance on bizarre sets designed by artists, which were utilized to mirror the internal landscapes of the characters, distorted and extreme architecture, cluttered sets, odd angles to denote anxiety or fear, objects and locations that take on an eerie independence, stylized and gesticulatory acting, and a story generally told with a framing device. Still, the greatest new technique employed by the expressionist filmmakers was the camera unchained. This allowed the camera to move about in a scene, creating all sorts of new ways to showcase a character's subjective point of view. So, with all that academic stuff out of the way, let's look at Suspiria and see how it stacks up against the standard German expressionist motifs, shall we? The tendency to use sets is one that plays a vital role in the film. The majority of Suspiria takes place inside the elaborately crafted dance academy with its flamboyant architecture, oddly colored rooms, weird lighting, and doors with unusually high knob placement, which Argento says was done to make the women in the film seem smaller and more vulnerable. All of this came courtesy of set designer Giuseppe Bassan. Suspiria is often faulted for its hammy and over-the-top performances, but this is yet another nod to the expressionists. The over-the-top theatrics on display in the film are called almost directly from expressionist cinema history. Argento is never content to underplay anything in the film, as the lurid colors, sweeping camera movements, operatic murder sequences, and hammy acting indicate. Everyone gets in on the act at some point, whether it's Stefania Cassini repeatedly sticking her tongue out at a fellow student, Alita Valley's over-the-top Miss Tanner, or even the usually demure Joan Bennett raving that they have to kill that bitch of an American girl at the film's climax.
I told you, we must get rid of that bitch of an American girl. Vanish, she must vanish. Make her disappear.
The acting, like just about everything else in Suspiria, has a decided lack of subtlety. By design. And finally, Suspiria also makes use of the expressionist tendency for creating cramped and claustrophobic visuals. Argento's camera prowls through the academy hallways like a character in its own right, with the lush red walls closing in on each side. The effect of temporal displacement is only heightened by the fact that many of these shots are filmed from a high-angle perspective, giving the impression that something huge and menacing lurks throughout the building. When you add all this together, it seems pretty clear that Argento drew inspiration from these classic early films. Would you agree? Suspiria fun fact number 5. Daria Nickelodeon was supposed to play Susie Bannion. Actress Daria Nickelodeon and Argento developed a real-life relationship while making Deep Red, with the actress becoming the director's muse in some ways. While Nickelodeon wrote much of the screenplay for Suspiria, she shares a credit with Argento, she was also slated to take the lead role. This all changed when the film's financial backers argued that the film would play better internationally with an American star. Argento saw Jessica Harper in Phantom of the Paradise and cast her in the role instead. Bet that made for some fun nights at the Argento house, eh? Undaunted, Nickelodeon was set to play supporting character Sarah, but was injured prior to filming, so the part went to Stefania Cassini instead. Nickelodeon does turn up in the finished film, however. She's seen in the opening airport scene at the start of Suspiria, and in the Italian language version, she provides the voice of Helena Marcos, which just proves that even when things go wrong, stick with it, something good could still come out of it. And there you have it. 5 things you may not have known about Dario Argento's Suspiria. The original remains one of my all-time favorite horror films, not only because of what happens on the screen, which is awesome, but also because of all the stuff that went into creating Argento's vision. If you've never seen Suspiria, I highly recommend it. Like, seriously, I can't recommend it enough. So you need to go out and grab a copy ASAP. If you're not sure which version to get, Synapse 4K restoration that came out last year is absolutely amazing. The film has never looked or sounded better. Make that one the one you get and thank me later. And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll come back and see me again.